It's the Wilk Report. I'm Michael Wilk, coming to you from Cleveland, Ohio. Joining me again once more is Larry Bernard from Florida.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? It
Yeah,
feels like we were just talking on a previous video.
yeah, probably.
Oh,
All right, yeah, we've got some Orville review to do today, and wow, this episode really blew me away because it has stepped up its game so much. Identity Part
also,
One.
something I like is the preceding episode before this one. It's really examining that the alliance that Earth has with other alien races. It's challenging, and they're picking friends, and they're friends that aren't necessarily sharing common core values.
Yeah, because what really got me, and before we head into everything, let's go ahead and do some reviews because actually no, I did not save any screen captures from that, but all right, so screw that. All right, but yeah, we've got Identity Part One because yeah, because the previous episode it dealt with issues pertaining to
The
Clyde
Mocklins some
and
more.
Mocklins, right? And because they've really gone to town uh, with the Mocklins and developing them as a species. Basically, Borta's ex-boyfriend comes aboard to help work on these shields because Orville is entering into uncharted regions of space, and they need to step up their deflector screens. And the episode, appropriately enough, is entitled "Deflectors," and it turns out Bortus's ex-boyfriend is a raging heterosexual and is therefore ostracized from Mocklin society. So he's
Well, he's hiding it, and that leads to a whole source of conflict for the whole show.
right, and of course Clyden acts like an egotistical, selfish asshole again, because he's like the self-styled defender of Mocklin culture and values. So yeah, so I mean the episode was really touching. We see Tala get some character development because she is attracted to.
I'm not really sure how attracted she was, honestly. I think it was more of a sure, why not kind of date.
Yeah, and yeah, but then it went places that not only developed Bortus, but Tala, and shows she's not just a Valara clone; she's actually her own character. Because I don't think this would have worked if it had been
I
Alara.
Yeah, I really like the depth that they gave to Bortus that episode.
Yeah, yeah, because she brings up what was done to his daughter, being forced
And
to turn
yeah,
her into a boy, and he really lets Tala have it for bringing that up. But ultimately, I think they're building up to Bortus being forced to confront, what kind of society he's from, and because he works aboard a Union ship, but he has endured things in his marriage and as a member of the crew that I think really have him questioning himself and his values.
and Clyden's boyfriend, of course, tried to set up. Excuse me, Bortus's ex-boyfriend tried to set up Clyden for his murder,
Right.
but everybody realizes, wait, this is way too easy.
Right.
And
Right. So of course he set up Clyden to take the fall for a murder that never happened, but Clyden really screwed up in that episode, and Tala lets him know, look, you want to repay me? You see me in the hallway, walk the other way. And then he
yeah,
walks back. And actually, I think this episode was originally meant to uh, be part of season one, but for some reason the network decided, no, we can only do this many episodes, but you can put it on for next season. So they had to shoehorn it in because they had been more or less leaving this alone.
well, I think it kind of plays well with the most recent episode
Yeah. So
because we've set the stage for it's not just the essentially the Klingons of this setting that's the threat. That there are deeper threats going on.
yeah, because now we've got the Kalon race stepping things up, and as it turns out, all right. So the episode kind of begins with, and this is a spoiler late in review, ladies and gentlemen who are
Because
watching. So
it's
if
very
you haven't seen
difficult
it,
to it's very difficult to appreciably discuss the episode without getting into spoilers.
right. So if you haven't seen it, my advice to you is turn off this video, go watch it, and then come back and watch it. But if you have seen it or you just don't give a shit, stay tuned and follow along with us. So this season, Claire and Dr. Claire Finn and Isaac have been spending more time together, and they develop a romance. And in this episode, they decide to tell her sons, Marcus and Ty, and suddenly he's
Off.
right. He just shuts down for no particular reason, and since
It's
they
those
can't
Windows updates in the future. They're still lethal.
right, and since they can't figure out how to turn him back on, they decide, well, the most logical conclusion, okay, well, let's take him back to his home planet and see if they can fix him. So we get our first glance of Kalon 1, which is kind of like this icy, cloud covered planet uh, from the outside, and then we start seeing the. And I can't help but be reminded of Coruscant from Star Wars.
It's like that in the Matrix, like when you first see the Matrix a little bit too.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we get to meet the Kalons, but and they're of course distinguished from Isaac by having red eyes and
Orange eyes, and there was
yeah,
I
orange
think I
eyes and
saw
violets. Yeah, I think the leader had red eyes, and then the rest were like all orange. But just from the outset, though, the difference in color scheme really kind of made them look a lot creepier than I think they otherwise would have been.
yeah,
Whereas
definitely.
if they'd all looked exactly like Isaac, I don't think it would have worked because I mean, first of all, you have to be able to tell them apart, but also it seems like part of the reason for the differentiation, besides being able to tell who's who, is also kind of denote that Isaac served a specific function in Kalon society, which was to go out and evaluate human beings.
Also, how creepy was the placement of their weapon array?
Yeah, let's look at that because, yeah, in fact, we'll get to that later. But what there's a lot of stuff where we actually get to see what's underneath Isaac's helmet, first of all, and then of course Isaac basically is being recalled from his mission. It's basically over. That's why they deactivated him. They were originally going to just disassemble him and download all his data, but they reactivate him. Uh, he notes he's been offline for
Out for like about a month and some change.
or yeah, I think it was like 32 or 36 cycles or whatever.
Yeah.
Of course, we don't know what Kalon cycles are. It's kind of implied that the trip to Kalon didn't take all that long, but there's a lot of character development here and growth where uh, Marcus and Ty especially is having trouble letting go of the notion that Isaac is going to be leaving the ship, and Claire is, her feelings are hurt because she's getting the impression that, the relationship was really just part of Isaac's fact-finding mission, and now that that's over, so is a relationship. So I really thought that, that was a pretty powerful impact. But uh, another thing that really amazed me was the guy they got playing Malloy.
Mm-hmm.
Damn, he can sing.
Yeah, he's got a good voice.
Yeah, and it makes me I mean, I forgot. This guy's been into Hollywood for most of his life, and he's a classically trained singer and actor, and he's been doing this a while. But damn, dude, I was kind of shocked. I thought they would have maybe asked Bordas or something, but no, having Malloy.
I mean that's the sort of thing that Seth MacFarlane's into, is people who are classically trained with acting and singing.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's a good touch for the show.
Yeah, and of course, Isaac is asked to give a speech, and the only thing he can come up with is to regurgitate Sally Field's
You like
speech.
me, you really, really like me.
Yeah, yeah, which was funny and touching at the same time because, but it kind of shows that there's hints that Isaac really is struggling uh, with his imminent departure. He doesn't know how to react to a lot of this.
I am suspicious about the ending, especially since we're in a spoiler review. We're free to say some things. I
Yeah,
think he
because
intended for Dr. Finn's youngest kid to find the giant caverns of skulls.
yeah, yeah, because Ty goes searching for Isaac because he, like I said, he doesn't want to let go. Isaac's become kind of a surrogate father to him, and he goes looking for him on Kalon when he's supposed to be in school, of course. But he stumbled. He, in order to hide from the other Kalon, he goes down this shaft and discovers a cavern full of skeletons. I mean, they're not even proper corpses anymore. I mean, these are skeletons that have been here, obviously, for quite some time. And we come to find out that the Kalon, uh,
Commit genocide.
yeah, basically they were the Cylons of the Orville universe because they uh, they were originally, yeah, because if you remember the original Cylons from Battlestar Galactica, and I'm not talking the rather more god awful reboot. I'm
Yeah.
talking about the original one with Lord Green and Dirk Benedict and everyone. So in that continuity, the Cylons were created by this reptilian race and then overthrew them and wiped them out. So that's a similar dynamic here. And when the crew, of course, finds out about this, the Kalon drop all pretenses. Well, I think also Borges had discovered that they were building these really weird structures. It turns
Yeah.
out to be a fleet of invasion ships because the it turns out that the Kalon never intended to join the Planetary Union. They used Isaac really to gather raw intelligence, determine if the uh, really to kind of determine if humanity was worth preserving, and decided that they weren't. So they stay. So basically, they decided, oh, we're going to deactivate Isaac. He's done with his mission. We're going to get the Orville to
You
bring him
see,
back because they've grown attached to him because they need the Orville in order to get past their defenses. But also, uh, I suspect part of it is they because they're keeping much of the crew alive. I mean, some red shirts got killed, obviously, but they,
also, something else that I was kind of interested in, it was very, well, the music was slightly different. It was very reminiscent of the big Borg sequences, how the music was strung together,
yeah,
how the scenes were shot. It was very reminiscent of that.
yeah, the music here, and I have to give MacFarlane and company credit here because they've been using the music to, I mean, when they descend into the atmosphere earlier in the episode, they're playing music that's very reminiscent of Star Trek: The Motion Picture. And you see the
Yeah, no,
spaceships
it
above the
was like that
clouds.
when they were flying in there. Yeah,
Right, and then of course at the end of the episode, like you pointed out, with the ships that the Kalan have been building, and they're really weird-looking ships. They look uh,
well, I
almost like
mean, if you don't,
donuts, almost.
yeah, I mean, if you don't have to worry about things organics need to worry about, you just pop people into little pods and you got a ship. Now, of course, the reason the Kalons have for invading is if you go too into hard science fiction, it's a suspect reason and illogical, but it's the kind of thing that the hard sci-fi versus soft and medium sci-fi you can kind of let go because you're having a good time.
Yeah, because basically their rationale is they've reached the limits of all the information they can store on their planet, and so they want to basically they've converted their entire planet. They've gathered all the information on their world that they can really use. Uh, it's getting too crowded on their world, and so Now it's their turn to
Now,
branch out into the rest of the universe. But
it, if you're wanting to do that, though, there's a sci-fi concept called a Jupiter brain, where you could convert a gas giant planet into a supercomputer.
yeah, and that's essentially what they did to their own homeworld, or at least the surface anyway. But they've they've decided that it's now time for them to branch out and go off into the rest of the universe. So I'm wondering how this is going to play out in later episodes, because certainly with the Krill, there's a rationale for getting them to come help, because once the Kalan are done with the Planetary Union, who do you think is going to be next?
And that could be where the story's going direction-wise.
Yeah,
But I
and
think we're going to see something very similar to Wolf, the Battle of Wolf, whatever the number is for
Wolf
that
three five
star.
nine, yeah, which is an
I,
actual star that
yeah, it's an actual
the
star.
Next Generation used. So, but I'm constantly impressed by MacFarlane and company, because they have a lot of Next Generation and Deep Space Nine and Voyager talent
Oh,
working on this
yeah,
show. Basically, Trek alumni, and
lots of them.
right, and they're contributing the scientific advisors. STD has none of that, because they don't even care about the science. So they're
And the other element I saw that was interesting when they were talking about, like they were showing the preview stuff for the next episode, some of it seemed a little bit evocative to almost to Babylon 5 and the movie they did about the battle where Sheridan and Sinclair both turned the war through their own actions, although they retconned it later because the actor who played Sinclair died when they made one of the last movies, and he wasn't able to reprise his role, and Stravinsky didn't feel like recasting the role.
right, and also the guy who played Sinclair during the actual show, they wrote him out because
He was
I guess
suffering
he
from mental illness, and
right, and then they brought him back for an episode, and they sent him back in time to be the Minbari with a human soul, and then he that's how the Minbari start being reincarnated as humans, and why they decide to end their war against humanity when they
yeah,
realize that Minbari souls are being reborn in human bodies. So yeah, it's all very yeah. I mean, go watch Babylon 5. Okay, I mean, a lot of the special effects were chintzy and low budget even back then, but it was still a good show. But yeah, I mean, this is the kind of writing though that we're not seeing on an actual Star Trek show, and here we're getting it on the Orville,
yeah,
which was
and
originally sold as Star Trek with dick jokes. But this is. But I also kind of like that there was a scene when they bring him to Kalon 1, and then they accuse the humans of abusing Isaac by putting Mr. Potato Head pieces on his face as a
and
joke.
that's something else I appreciate about the Orville, how they're always willing to call back and reference things that happened. It's something I appreciate about the show.
Yeah, but it's also done in the classic Shrek way, where it's referenced in such a way that you don't have to go back and watch the other episode. It will be nice, but you don't absolutely have to. And so, they respond, well, yeah, we did that, but he also cut off our helmsman's leg, and
Yeah,
misunderstanding it. Uh, Mercer is like, we are so getting fired for this, because it's like,
yeah,
yeah, but somehow I don't think that's going to happen, because. But yeah, I have to wonder though, because they've been dropping little hints in Mark Jackson's body language while he's in the Isaac suit. Of I have trouble believing that he's really turned. Like I have to wonder.
I I think some of the language they use, like did you make a decision? There's also the possibility that this is all a giant simulation.
There is that possibility, but also uh, I'm not so sure, because that would be a heck of a cheat, because they've already done that
Well,
for Alara, where
they
the
did.
episode turned out, and it's like, why do something you've already done before? But if you take something like, okay, something like this, where it's like, because these are basically Asimov's robots without the laws of
No
humanity.
three laws of robotics.
Right. So, and obviously the Kalon's makers didn't program that with their equivalent. So, they got wiped out. But uh, the way they explain it was they took no satisfaction in committing genocide. It's just they
It was the most logical thing to do.
right. Well, they described it as a war for survival. So it's kind of hinted that their makers tried to destroy them when they realized that their own creations were getting beyond them, and so kind of like Skynet in the Terminator, it decided, oh well, we're just going to wipe you out because you're trying to kill us, and you're not leaving us any choice. Although even that I think is kind of a cop out because it's like, well, yeah, but you're also using machine logic and saying, oh, it's just more efficient to kill them all rather than trying to enslave them.
And then if we get too deep into that, it's more efficient to convert a gas giant in your star system into a computer system.
Yeah. So
And then once you go to that point, then you could build an artificial shell world
yeah,
and
like a
build an
desert
energy
sphere.
system.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
uh,
obviously the
there,
Kalon probably haven't thought that far ahead, which suggests you're not quite as advanced as they would like to think of themselves as being.
well, the problem is when you go too deep down a pipeline for hard science fiction, it gets kind of rough.
Yeah, yeah, which is the only flaw I can really see in this episode, because I mean, this is really kind of like Isaac's episode, but it's also uh, the episode for Captain Mercer because you know, I mean, watching the scene where
He's
Seth
like,
MacFarlane
"What the
is
hell,
confronted,
guys?"
right, and he says like, that offer to join the union, it's withdrawn. Like, yeah, you can just kind of like feel the anger radiating off him like that. So I mean, I just man, I mean, this has me really looking forward to seeing next week's episode.
Yeah, it's definitely sold the next episode well, which is good.
Yeah, but I have to wonder though, like how on the side of his own people is Isaac though? Because I think, and because I've watched enough episodes like this on other shows to
Well,
get a sense for how it could go,
well,
and
remember what the kid said. Why was he always playing games with us?
right, and Claire saying,
I, I think
he
I
does
think
feel just not in the way that we understand it.
yeah, but I think it may end up being a game theory resolution at the end of the episode.
Right. Well, I don't know. There was a hint where they reactivate Isaac, and he kind of his reaction is kind of like to remark how he's been. I guess he didn't expect to be reactivated.
I said, have we made a decision?
Right. And
And I
so
think
and so I
that
think he decided, well, okay, so they're moving forward with their plans, so maybe it's time to go sleeper agent, uh,
yeah,
like double sleeper agent. So he's been a sleeper agent for the Kalon all this time, but maybe he's planning some, uh, maybe he's planning something to get them out of this. Because I can't really, I find it really hard to believe that Isaac would do this because it just goes completely against everything
yeah,
that have been built up to this point. But then again, they kind of pull this one, which is, again, I wasn't really expecting this, but now that I've seen it, I'm my mind is turning, and I want to see if my guesses are correct.
yeah. There's a lot of good things to make you want to watch the next story.
Yeah, and yeah, and as far as STD, it's like, I'm done. Like seriously, I've got no desire whatsoever to subject myself to any more. I mean, I know we're going to have to review it at some point because I want to be able to compare. But it's because there have been hints that STD has been kind of copying from the Orville. Even going back to last season when they
Yeah,
were they're kind of like cribbing on stuff, and that's expected. I mean, they stole tardigrades from Anna's Abdon, and now they're trying to steal some more comedy style episodes from the Orville. It's like, guys, you have no idea how to tell jokes either. So why are you trying to? I mean, does Alex Klussman have no original bone in his body where he can't even
well,
go?
I mean, he's apparently using a time travel plot. I haven't been watching STD, but I've heard there's a time travel plot's been incorporated in there somehow.
Yeah, and apparently the Red Angel uh, is featuring, but just to wrap up our little review, have a thing on space.com, and their review says that Identity Part 1 is an episode unlike any other up to this point. This is by Scott Snowden, and his byline is, spoilers ahead, wow, just wow.
It was definitely a difference in tone than what I was expecting for the Orville, and that's a fact.
Yeah, and although we did call Deflectors a mostly mediocre episode, so I'm like, nah, I mean, because
I mean,
it's a good character,
it's a good character study.
character-driven story, which I like, but yeah, but it's also supposed to be science fiction, so. But yeah, so apparently during an interview, Mark Jackson said that we would find out more about Kalon 1 as the season progressed, and yeah, we definitely did this week. So,
And how many episodes does the Orville have this season?
I think it's 13.
I really don't like how short TV shows are anymore.
Right. Well, on the one hand, yeah, I can relate because Star Trek: The Next Generation, they went like 24 seasons, and I think it was like at its height, it was like $1 million an episode for its time. So that's basically 24.
I mean, I understand the business sense of it, but I don't think we're really getting the same sort of developmental quality with the shorter season.
Yeah,
and
which on the one hand I can say, yeah, I concur, but on the other hand, we don't have nearly as many filler episodes.
But you know what the big point of filler episodes was? A filler episode would allow you to course correct if something weird happened, like, oh, everybody hates Wesley. Literally everybody hates Wesley.
Yeah, so we won't have him in the next couple, or he won't feature as prominently.
Yeah.
But yeah, but yeah, it's pretty badass. So I mean, if you've got even Rotten Tomatoes is
I think
tune about
I think a lot of the critics have changed their tune because they didn't get it, and then after everybody else got it, they're like, "Oh, well, let me take a moment to review this." I'm like, "Oh, okay, maybe we weren't on the right bandwagon."
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and they even got a successful screen capture of what's underneath Isaac's faceplate, and yeah, it's yeah, caption says, once under the hood for the first time, what's inside Isaac's helmet is revealed. And yeah, because for some reason they had to lift up his faceplate to reactivate him.
But yeah, that those guns coming out of the head though, that was like, whew.
Yeah, and I wonder, does Isaac have these same features, or because I didn't see any hint of weaponry inside his head, so I'm wondering, just how many Kalon have these weapons built into their heads, because we don't see that on every one of them. But it seems like, and the caption here says Kalon Systems Model 101 with lasers spawning from their heads. So yeah, I mean, but yeah, I mean, they were just going to town. I mean, red shirts were dropping like flies, and I mean, it just. Although I do have to take issue with this, so because Snowden says the Orville certainly doesn't look as good as Star Trek Discovery. No, actually, it looks a lot better because STD is the visuals are just a mess. They're overproduced, too dark, too many lens flares, too many Dutch angles, so much visual information crammed in that you can't process it all of it.
I mean, if you're going to throw in too many Dutch angles, you might as well go full Battlefield Earth with Dutch angles.
Yeah, but with, right, but with the Orville, I mean, it's basically, much more '80s visuals where it's like, yeah, it's nice and clean. You can see what's happening. You've got time to digest what's happening. So, yeah, but yeah, I mean, this is. If you want to read the article, I'll have all this stuff linked to below. So if you're curious to read through all of this, yeah, that'll be included when this is uploaded. But yeah, I like I said, I'm really looking forward to seeing next week's episode. So, do you have anything else to add before we close out?
I'm looking forward to the next season of the Orville, and
Yeah,
I think we're gonna have.
yeah, I think season 3 is really going to step it up, and because I mean season 2 is like really, it's really taking it to another level now. But I think the show has really found its footing. Whereas like last season, it was still kind of like finding itself. This season, it's coming into its own, and I think every season after this, regardless of how long it goes on, it's. I mean, eventually it'll reach its peak and level off before it goes downhill. I hope they don't keep it going for like 6 or 7 seasons and wear out its welcome. I think 5 is probably good before they call it quits. But for now, I mean, I can't wait to see season 3.
Yeah,
But we've got, interestingly enough, no hint of season 3 for STD, which is
yeah,
interesting because you'd think that they would have noticed, they would have announced by now, but we're not getting any of that.
yeah. They're trying to sell us a game that they're going to be doing. Oh, well, we're going to totally have these other shows that are going to fill the slot when we roll around.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll see what happens. So
But they've been doing an awful lot of reshoots on STD this season.
yeah. Well, anyway, that's pretty much it for this episode. If you like what you've heard and you want to hear more, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to receive notifications whenever we upload new content. And if you
Click on the Patreon so we can get some money.
yeah, because
Because go to see movies, get the streaming services to watch stuff to review.
yeah, all this costs
Like,
money we don't have. So
yeah, like for example, I don't know if you have a good access to Netflix. Umbrella Academy is actually pretty good.
yeah, so yeah, we want to be able to review more content for you. Beyond what we've done so far. I mean, we will keep reviewing like the Orville and Star Trek Discovery and the mess that is
You have
Lucasfilm, but we do
you,
want
you
to
got you
do
got to
those.
chase some trends,
Yeah,
to get your views.
right. So yeah, well, yeah. So what we want to do is like we do want to be able to bring you more content and a more diverse content too, not just limit it to
Yeah.
the usual that other people are doing. So hop on Patreon or Subscribe Star, whichever one you prefer. Become a donor, get the rewards in the side columns, and basically help us pick what you want to hear about.
Yeah.
So this is Michael Wilk for the Wilk Report and Larry Bernard saying take care, good night, and we are out.
Yeah.